Coming home. Mashyach. Messiah. 7. I will return. To restore my people. Since God thought it was worth revealing, it is worth restating. Repetition is how we learn and retain information. Yahowah's testimony speaks more repetitively concerning David than anyone else. Daud's own recounting of his relationship with God, along with disclosures about his life from prophets like Shamuel, Yirma'yah, and Zechariah, reveals that Yahowah sought to make their relationship the centerpiece of his revelation to mankind. In recognition of this reality, let's continue to assess what Yahowah revealed regarding Daud, Yehudah, and Yisrael in the days before, during, and after his return. This prophecy comes to us by way of Yirma'yah, commonly known as Jeremiah. The word, ha-daber, the message communicated, which, to reveal the way to enjoy the benefits of the relationship, asher, that leads to the path to walk to get the most out of life, came to exist, haya, with, el, Yirma'yah, Yahowah raises and lifts up, Yahowah teaches and guides, respect and revere Yah, commonly transliterated Jeremiah, from, min, heth, Yahowah, the Almighty's proper designation pronounced as instructed by his Torah guidance on his haya. Existence in his role in our shalom reconciliation as our, Eloah God, to announce, La Amar, Yirma'yah 30:1, this is what, Yahowah, the God of Yisrael, Elohim Yisrael, the Almighty of those who engage and endure with God, proclaims, Amar, so as to declare, Amar, of your own volition, write, Kathabla Ada, choose to literally inscribe, jotting down using this alphabet. Kal imperative, all of these words, Eth-Kol ha-dabrim, every one of the statements, which lead to the proper path to get the most out of life, that. Asher, I have and will be speaking to you about, Daber el Ada, doing so in a written document so that there is a permanent record, el Seper. Yirma'yah 30:2. Daber was scribed 3 times, as was Amar, and Yahowah's name was written twice, as added emphasis that these are the words literally spoken by Yahowah. Asher appears 2 times confirming that what Yahowah communicated expressly through Yirma'yah is his desire to reveal to us the correct path we need to walk to receive the benefits of the relationship. Further, Yahowah is developing his affinity for Yisrael, something we'd be wise to accept if we want to be part of it. Also, Haya serves as the foundation of Yahowah's name and denotes his existence. The prophet's name conveys that Yahowah's teaching guides those who come to respect him to the point that he is able to lift them up and raise them as a father would do for his children. With the inclusion of the volitional mood, we discover that Yirma'yah was acting on his own free will as a willing co-worker and associate and not as a passive implement or obedient servant. Equally revealing, by including Kathab and Seper there is no denying that Yahowah wanted an immediate, written memorialization of his spoken words, to maintain the integrity of the message and to share his testimony openly and accurately. Our willingness to listen in and then convey these same words achieves an exceptional result. We become a party to the conversation, as if we were there. We are placed in the same position as the prophet. Because the prophets transcribed the spoken words of Yahowah into the written word of God, everyone has unencumbered access to the truth. Yahowah made this possible so that we can get to know him, appreciate what he is offering, accept what he is requesting, and benefit from the result, independently and directly, with all of the pertinent facts laid out before us. It seems obvious, but perhaps still worth mentioning, we'd be wise to capitalize upon what God, and his prophets, provided. There are also numerous insights we can draw from this introduction. First, Yahowah identifies himself by name and by title, declaring that he is the God of Yisrael. Second, God prefers to speak first, and for us to listen. Third, Yahowah wants us to write down what we hear so that we can accurately share it with others. Fourth, Yahowah chooses to communicate through the prophets he has chosen. Fifth, Yahowah proves the authenticity of his prophets through the actual fulfillment of their prophecies. Sixth, Yahowah wants us to observe his written word as a collective whole rather than in bits and pieces. His testimony should never be pulled out of context or truncated to suit anyone's agenda. Seventh, Yahowah understands that the written word is less susceptible to alteration and better suited to learning and, therefore, prefers it to the spoken word. Eighth, God knows that the written word facilitates closer examination and more thoughtful consideration, thereby making it easier for us to know him. Ninth, Yahowah recognizes a written document provides a demonstrable record upon which his prophecies can be evaluated and his validity authenticated. We should also be smart enough to realize that when some pretentious religious proponent claims that God spoke to him, he is lying. We know this because God had his prophets write down everything he had to say, including his name, the one the Nimrods abhor. Moreover, the message that village idiots convey routinely contradicts, rather than affirms, the proven words of God. Yahowah's message endures the test of time. And in this instance, his words pertain to our time. Indeed, KY, this is reliable and important. Please pay attention, Hina, be alert because, a time is coming, Yaumim Bao, days are approaching, prophetically reveals, Naam, declares and announces long before it occurs, Yahowah, God's proper designation pronounced as instructed by his Torah, guidance on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation as our, Eloah, God, when I will return to restore, Washub, when I will come back to bring back. The property and possessions taken during the captivity, Shabuth, the assets and fortunes stolen during the imprisonment, of my people, and any, of my family, Yisrael individuals who engage and endure with God, Yisrael, and, in addition to, along with, Yehudah beloved of Yehudah, declares, Amar, says, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation. And then, I will return them, bringing them back, Shubhem, I will transform and restore them, to, El, the land, Eretz, the place, that, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, which, to show the way to get the most out of life, I gave, Nathan, I offered, bestowed, and appointed, to their fathers, La, Abhem. They will receive it as their inheritance, Yirma'yah, as rightful heirs who were driven out, they will take possession of it. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up /Jeremiah 30 verse 3. Israel belongs to Yisraelites, the descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob. Judea belongs to Yehudim, the beloved of Yahowah. Therefore, God takes exception with the myth that there is a Palestinian people and thus their claim that Palestine is their country. We can be assured there will not be two states established and enduring on the land. Beyond this, after experiencing the diabolical impact of giving the high ground of Czechoslovakia to the Nazis, we should know that appeasing terrorists is a really bad idea. Further, this prophecy reveals that Yahowah is coming back, and he is doing so to return the land and property he gave to Yisrael and Yehudah. It is their inheritance, and God is displeased that so many, beginning with Egypt, Assyria, and Babylon, then Greece and Rome, followed by Christians and Muslims, seized his land from his people. I can assure you that God is not stupid, nor is he inarticulate. If Yahowah wanted to say that his return is on behalf of a church and for the benefit of Christians, or that he is coming back as Jesus Christ, he would have said so. If he favored the Dome of the Rock or Al-Aqsa Mosque, Muhammad or Muslims, and wanted to be known as Allah, he would convey all of this but did not. If his name were too sacred or too complicated to pronounce, as an ode Judaism, he would have used Hashem rather than Yahowah. And if he respected the principles of Judaism, he would not use Shub to describe his return if the rabbinical notion that he is incorporeal were true. Continuing to reinforce the obvious, if God intended to transfer the promises he made to Daud, Yisrael, and Yehudah instead to Jesus, Christians, and their church, he would not say that a day is coming when he will return to restore the property and possessions taken from Yisraelites and Yehudim by Gentiles. For an informed and rational person, this is a fatal blow to the mythology of replacement theology and thus to the basis of Christianity. Since Asher continues to play such an important role in this prophecy, its next appearance will be even more fully amplified for our edification. It is, after all, the word that brought us to these words decades ago. And these are the words, Wa el leha dabrim, so God spoke the words in this message, which, to reveal the way, Asher, that provide directions to enjoy the benefits of the relationship on behalf of the blessed, fortunate, and happy, showing the steps to walk in the correct and restrictive manner which give meaning to life and provide encouragement and joy to those properly led and guided by, Yahowah, God's proper designation pronounced as instructed by his Torah, guidance on. His Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation as our Eloah, God, spoke, Daber, communicated, concerning, El, as God on behalf of Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, and, Wa, in addition, to Yehudah, El Yehudah, concerning beloved of Yah and related to Yah, even relate to Yahowah. Yirma'yah 30:4. This is what, here, now, at this time, thusly, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation, conveyed, Amar, says and proclaims, as we heard, Shama, we were able to hear and listen to, the sounds, Kau, the noise, voice, and audible cry, of concern over the terrorists and terrorism, Charada Pakad, of the horrible anxiety and panic, the overwhelming dread and fear, when there were no prospects of reconciliation or peace, Wa, Ein Shalom, nothing favorable or beneficial, no contentment or satisfaction, no friendship or sense of well-being or tranquility. Yirma'yah/Yah teaches and guides /Jeremiah 30 verse 5. This prophecy reiterates that Yahowah continually speaks to and about Yisrael and Yehudah. As such, God does not give up on his people and will not enrich others at their expense. Yahowah promised to restore the stolen possessions of Yisrael and Yehudah, taken by the very Gentiles now terrorizing his people. Addressing them, Yahowah is clearly cognizant. Rabbis have managed to convolute the purpose of his YYV2C7, especially Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, such that there is no longer a means to reconciliation in the land. Making matters worse, the rabbis disavow Chag Matzah, deny the fulfillment of the YYV2C7, and do not accept Daud as their savior, much less as the Messiah and Son of God, leaving no prospect for Shalom. Considering what follows, a word of caution is due. This is directed at Yisraelites and Yehudim, going about their lives just as others have done throughout the centuries. They are living in denial, believing that tomorrow will be like today and that nothing material is going to change. It is the mindset that made the Holocaust possible, largely because Jews couldn't fathom the implications of trying to survive in a world resolved on trying to eradicate them. But this foretells events well beyond the ordinary. We are entering the occasion of restoration and return as we approach the time of Jacob's troubles. If you are a Yahud or Yisraelite, wake up and smell the stench of religiously and politically inspired terrorism before you become a victim. Recognize that you are the target. Resolve your conflicts with Yahowah now, because tomorrow may be too late. As we progress to the next statement, I am aware of a number of covenant members who recently gave birth to a child or who contemplate having children. Rest assured, as we will read, their faces are not among those Yasees as nauseating. Their children will accompany them into the covenant. Our Heavenly Father guarantees this, in fact, he could not do otherwise. That said, Yahowah is not calling it inappropriate for women to bear children immediately prior to, or during the time of Israel's tribulation. It is, instead, God mocking the feminization and pacifism of the Herdim, and their penchant for procreating like rabbits. It is also about the LGBTQ2SAA+ community, which has become so prevalent, popular, and vocal in Israel while promoting gender angst and confusion. Please, it is my desire that, you should want to ask, Sha'al, you should choose to inquire so as to learn, Kal imperative, such that you choose to perceive, under the auspices of free will, you may want to see, Kal imperative, if it is possible, whether, that a young man, Zakar, a knowledgeable male who remembers, can actually give birth, Yalad, can realistically have a child or can cause a baby to be born, Kal participle. Why then, Medoa, what is the reason and on what account, do I see, do I observe, perfect first person singular, every male with the strength to prevail, kol jiber, all fully functioning men, especially those who are proud of themselves, with his hands on his stomach or genitals, yadhu al kalitzimhu, with hands on his waist or loins, as if a woman in labor, ka ha yalad, like a woman giving birth. Furthermore, every one of their faces, kol pana, is overwhelmingly and disturbingly, turning, hafak, looking overwhelmed and transformed in a disturbing way, appearing distressed, nifel perfect third-person masculine plural, pale and nauseated, la yerikaun, a deathly pallor as if covered in fungus in a basal response to fear, sickly yellow and greenish from a loss of blood to the face. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up /Jeremiah 30 verse 6. With 40% of Israelis currently protesting in favor of gender and sexual ambiguity and inclusiveness, with the notable exclusion of heterosexuals, and another 40% good for nothing but breeding, God is revealing that the majority of his people have a disgusting pallor as if their faces are covered in a nauseating fungus. What's more, God is implying that the Haredi have their hands on their penis, as it is the only weapon they are willing to wield. And the progressives have their hands on their hips, undecided about which way to swing. Both have lost sight of the value of men and women working together as partners to raise a family. By a considerable majority, the youth in Israel have forgotten why men should be masculine and women feminine, equal but wonderfully different in their contributions to conceiving, nurturing, and supporting children. Their understanding and participation in the covenant are, thereby, handicapped, precluding them from obtaining the proper perspective. And as we have noted, confusion does not lead to knowing or to Yah. Based upon his rhetoric, Yahowah is not bothered by human sexuality so long as it is neither perverted, abusive, nor life-defining. Based upon this prophetic assessment, it's obvious that he is not amused by those who promote their sexual orientation as a source of pride, as if identifying with some aspect of the Kip2SAA plus makes them more enlightened and somehow superior. And he is not pleased with the death cult of the Haredi, whereby millions of boys and girls are born into a life of social and religious indoctrination and subjugation, leading to a condescending and unthinking existence. With respect to our social practices, God is opposed to rape, incest, pedophilia, bestiality, and non-consensual hostility. Therefore, I would encourage readers to look closely at what Israel has become and then view this prophecy regarding the last days from that perspective. If we were to misinterpret these words to infer that men shouldn't be fathering children at this time, it would pose an interesting question. Why is the human population of this planet exploding while its health is imploding? Why are so many fixated on their sexuality, stimulating their bodies instead of their minds? Please pay attention to this important announcement. Alas, Howie, this warning, truthfully, indeed, that day and this time, Hayam Hahu, this period, will be so extraordinary and unusual, Gadol, will be so uncommon and important, surprising and astonishing, beyond compare, that there has never been anything similar to it, Min, Ein Kamohu, that it stands apart because there has been nothing remotely like this. It is the time of Yaakov's troubling confinement and adversity, Tzarahu la Yaakov, it is the period of Yisrael's anguish and distress, of Jacob's tribulation when Israel will be narrowed, reduced in size, and oppressed in dire straits by vicious foes. And yet from it, Min, out of it, he, Yaakov representing Yisrael, shall be liberated and saved, Yasha, will be delivered and rescued, and experience salvation, Nifel imperfect. Yirma'yah/respect Yah/Jeremiah 30 verse 7. Unlike man's fairy tales which typically begin well and end poorly, with Yahowah, the beginning was as glorious as will be the ensuing conclusion. The most horrific days humankind will ever endure are fast approaching, with the full effect of man's rage unleashed over the next 10 years. In particular, life beginning in 2026 and continuing through 2033, will be unsustainable and unbearable, particularly for Jews. And yet, this story has a happy ending. Out of the time of Yaakov's troubles, Yahowah will liberate and spare Yisrael and Yehudim. Before we move on, God provides 4 vital lessons he does not want you to miss. First, the prophecy addresses Yaakov equals Israel and, thus, Yisraelites and Yehudim. We are, therefore, approaching the time of Israel's troubling confinement and adversity. While the world at large will suffer from debilitating wars, virulent pandemics, deadly famines, catastrophic depressions, hyperinflation, political upheaval, ruthless terrorism, widespread indoctrination and propaganda, the curtailment of liberty, debilitating conspiracies, energy shortages, and unimaginable natural disasters, these are not God's concerns. He remains focused upon and interested in his people, and they are going to have a rough time of it. Should Christians, Muslims, Hindus, communists, and progressives annihilate themselves, it saves God the trouble. And while that may sound harsh, it is realistic. Soon, there will only be a remnant of Yisraelites remaining to greet Yahowah upon his return. Based upon Yahowah's prior commentary, I'd be surprised if more than 1 in a million Gawis survive to see Yahowah's arrival. And among Yehudim, perhaps 1 in 1,000 will accept the truth before it is too late. Second, Tzara, which is the feminine of Zar, derives its meaning from its verbal root, Tzara. It means to bind, which is to control religiously, politically, judicially, or militarily. Tzara is, to narrow by besieging and confining. This indicates that Israel will shrink in size and that Jews will be confined to certain areas and not allowed into others. Worldwide, it suggests a return to the shtetls and ghettos. Tzara also means to treat with enmity, vex, harass, persecute, and oppress. And since this is directed at a single race, we should be anticipating a steady rise in antisemitism. Apart from its actionable root, Tzara describes a calamitous and anguishing time of trouble, with unfavorable circumstances causing emotional suffering and physical agony. Also telling in this regard, Zar serves as the basis of Mitzrayim, where the Mi prefix encourages us to contemplate the implications of Zar while the Ym suffix denotes that there are multiple causes of distress. This is to say that Jews will suffer as they once did under Mitzrayim the crucibles of religious and political oppression in Egypt. Third, it is from this time of Towrah that a remnant of Israel will be Yasha, delivered, liberated, and spared. And since this prophetic promise follows a denunciation of sexually confused progressives and haredim, we can surmise that they will not be among the minority who will be reconciled. And fourth, please be aware that things are going to change rapidly, and for the worse. God said, this time will be so extraordinary and unusual that there has never been anything similar to it. With the large influx of Muslims into Europe following America's misadventures in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, and Somalia, the continent is as anti-Semitic now as it was prior to the Holocaust. America's insistence on killing Russians by using Ukraine as a proxy is going to be exceedingly disruptive to economies, international trade, energy distribution, and food supplies, and it will likely end in a nuclear war. The world's insane response to the COVID-19 virus is evidence that everything can change in an instant, with the deprivation of life, liberty, and livelihoods. Further, with America crumbling and China soaring, alliances in the Middle East are rapidly evolving. This carousel will stop revolving when the Muslim nations agree on the one thing that unites them, the desire to destroy Israel. Further, Israel's capricious benefactor, the United States, is rapidly headed toward extinction, which will leave Jews vulnerable. All the while, Israel is tearing itself apart at the seams, with progressives and haredim in irreconcilable conflict. Therefore, life will become intolerable for most diaspora Jews and Israelis while a precious few will find salvation. And in this case, Ahu, his means to manipulate and control being singular is likely a reference to the corporeal manifestation of Satan who is expected to arrive in early April 2030. 3 years later. And it will happen during that time, Wahaya ba hayam hahu, it will come to pass in this day, prophetically declares, Naam, reveals well in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation, of the vast array of spiritual implements, Saba, of the command and control regiment of heavenly messengers, that I will break, Shabar, I will destroy such. That it no longer exists, Kal in perfect first-person singular, his yoke, his means of control and manipulation, O who, his means to deal ruthlessly and wantonly, both singular, from upon your neck, Min, out Sa'ar Ada, and I will pull off and tear away, Wa Natak, your bonds and shackles, Mausra Ada, your fetters and chains which bind. Those who are illegitimate and unauthorized, those falsely claiming authority who are foreigners advocating that which is improper, Zerim, strangers who are estranged, will no longer make him, Jacob and, thus, Israel, work for him, while lo, Abad Bahu out, will never again enslave him, forcing him to either worship their way or be reduced to servitude. Yirma'yah 30:8. It sounds archaic to speak of freeing slaves, but frankly it's not, particularly for Muslims. There are some 50 million slaves today, 3 times the number of Jews. Further, Satan is a despot, and his corporeal manifestation will impose a tyrannical fascist or communist government over Israel such that no one will be free. The Egyptians were the first to enslave Jews and force them to labor on their behalf. But the same was done by the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Romans, Roman Catholics, Muslims, and most recently Europeans. The extreme subjugation of Jews is still envisioned by the conspirators. But these shackles will be removed and broken. Yehudim and Yisraelites will live as the Torah teaches, free and liberated lives. Choosing to do that which is rewarding and beneficial, and under the auspices of free will, Yisraelites shall instead engage in a labor of love. And they will do so with the most beloved. Instead, they will work with, Abad they will productively labor alongside, Yahowah, God's proper designation pronounced as instructed by his Torah, guidance on his Haya, existence on our Shalom, reconciliation, their God, Elohim, and with Daud, Daud, alongside the beloved, more commonly known as David, their king and counselor, Melech their sovereign and advisor, whom, to reveal the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, I will raise up and establish for them, Kyum Lahem, I will fulfill and validate my oath to affirm, taking a stand to empower for them, restoring them, Haiful imperfect. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me / Jeremiah 30:9. Since I value work, I'm always pleased to find an affirmation that we will be employed by Yahowah during the millennial Shabat and beyond. Although, that isn't the most revealing aspect of this declaration. We will also be working with Daud. So, how is it that Jews are unaware of the Messiah's name and Christians believe Jesus is returning? Are they illiterate, ignorant, or pig-headed? Yisrael and Yehudah will return and embrace the reason they were chosen, which is to work with Yahowah for the betterment of all mankind. And they will do so with the man Yahowah chose to lead and advise them, his beloved son, David. Yahowah referred to Daud as his Ebed, co-worker, more often than anyone else, perhaps more than all others combined, for a reason. So, it is fitting here that having finally chosen to work with Yehudim and Yisraelites are following Daud's example. I know that I'm beating a dead false prophet, but nonetheless, it must be acknowledged that Shaul Paul lied when he claimed that David had served his purpose in his time and was no longer relevant. When a person's testimony is in direct conflict with God's word, they are wrong. And then, Jacob, the one who firmly embeds himself, serving as a synonym for Yisrael, my co-worker, Ebed Eni, my associate who works with me, you will have nothing to fear, Ada, Al-Yar, no reason to be intimidated or frightened, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation, reveals well in advance of it occurring, Naam, prophetically declares. Nor will you be dismayed, Al-Chathath, nor will you be discouraged or destroyed, neither abolished nor confused, Yisrael, individuals who engage and endure with God, because, behold, Ky Hina, for the reason that if you pay attention, I will save you, delivering you, Eni Yasha, Ada, I will orchestrate and enable your rescue, liberating you, while providing you with protection and salvation. Hyphal participle masculine singular, from being distant and alienated, min. Rachok, from becoming separated long ago in a previous period of time, along with your offspring, zera, your descendants and seed, as well as that which you have sown, by exiting the land, min eretz, being withdrawn from the place of their exile and captivity, shabihem, where they were controlled and oppressed, even taken captive. And, Yaakov, the one who firmly embeds himself, serving as a synonym for Yisrael, will change and return, Shub, will turn around and come back, recovered and restored, Kal perfect, and be at peace and put at ease, Washakat Washan, find himself in a satisfying situation and favorable circumstance, Kal perfect, with no one troubling him, Ein Charad, without a concern, Hyphal participle. Yirma'yah/respect Jeremiah 30 verse 10. In context, being at peace with our minds at rest, does not infer inactivity. There is a lot to be achieved when working with Yah. We will continue to be productive throughout time. Also relevant, Yahowah has now reiterated 3 times that he, working through and with Daud, will liberate and save Yisrael and Yehuda. This serves to reinforce the value of the covenant, which is a family affair. All of those who have and continue to claim that God is with them are in for a rude awakening. Yahowah is the God of Yisrael and does not want us to forget it. For I am with you, Ada Eni, prophetically declares, Naam, Yahowah, to liberate and save you, La Yasha Ada, to provide freedom and salvation, deliverance and prosperity for you. Indeed, I will engage and act, Asa, I will do what is necessary, to bring an end to, Kala, I will without fail bring to a conclusion, completely vanquishing, all of the Gentile nations and institutions, Ba Kol Hagaon, all of the foreign countries, entities, and each of the pagan peoples of conflicting cultures who are brought together by religion or politics, among whom I have scattered and dispersed you, Asher Putz Ada, by name and reputation, Sham, thereby renown. You will be the exception because, Ada, yet instead with you, I will not act in such a way, Lo, Asa, I will not cause you to fail or perish, Kala, I will not facilitate your conclusion or your demise, you will not be annihilated or destroyed. Instead, I will instruct you, Yasar Ada, I will enable you to be correct, teaching you and thereby strengthening you, in the means to execute good judgment regarding the means to resolve disputes, La Hamishpat, in how to be judgmental, on how to be discerning and discriminating such that you can make good decisions, from to ponder and ask questions about Shapat, being judgmental, making sound decisions, resolving controversies, and being just, such that you are found innocent and are not punished, Wanaka, so that you are pardoned and forgiven, seen as clean and pure, purged of imperfections and exempt from punishment and free from all obligations. I will not banish you or leave you destitute, Lo, Naka Ada, I will see to it that you are never again forced to live elsewhere or lack for anything you may need, Peel imperfect energic nun Jussiv, Yah is enthusiastically acting upon Yisrael such that they receive these ongoing and enduring benefits, and is celebrating, using a third-person expression of volition akin to, let this be so, Yirma'yah/Yah teaches and guides/Jeremiah 30 verse 11. Just as our love is neither real nor relevant when we fail to vehemently oppose those who seek to harm our children, Yahowah is now making the same distinction. To be a loving, supportive, and protective father, he must act out against those who have abused his family over the millennia. As a result, God will bring an end to every antagonistic Gentile nation and institution on earth. There will be no United States, no People's Republic of China, no European Union, no Russian Federation, no Roman Catholic Church, no Christianity, and no Islam. Their mistaken beliefs led them away from God. For them, tomorrow's news brought an unpleasant and unexpected outcome. Such will not be the case with the chosen people, Yisraelites and Yehudim, because Yahowah will never abandon them. To be instructed by God is to read his Torah, something that will soon become much easier. Upon his return with Daud, and as they renew the covenant with Yisrael, Yahowah will inscribe a copy within us, providing direct access to his guidance. This will equip us to safely and responsibly explore a 6-dimensional universe and allow us to enter the 7th dimension of the spiritual realm. Yada Yahowah. There are 2 additional relevant references to this occasion of restoration and return in Yirma'yah. The next appears in the following chapter, and it is among the most powerful announcements ever conveyed by God. The prophecy begins as did the last, focusing on the same people. And yet, as the only statement within the prophets addressing a Berith Chadash, renewed covenant, it is both essential and lethal to Christianity. Without it, there is no basis for a New Testament. With it, the foundational claims of the New Testament are destroyed, completely and irrevocably obliterated. Behold, Haina, look up and pay especially close attention, a time is coming, Yamim Bao, days are approaching, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence and his role in our Shalom, reconciliation as Eloah, Almighty God, reveals, well in advance of it occurring, Naam, prophetically declares, when I will enter into and cut with, Wakeret Eth, when I will establish through separation a set-apart agreement on behalf of the house of Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, the home of those who engage and endure with God, and with Eth, the family of Yehuda, Beit Yehuda, the household of those beloved by Yah, are restored and renewed, Chadash, are repaired and reaffirming, from Chadash, to renew and repair, to restore and reaffirm, covenant, Berith, family-oriented relationship. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up and raises me/Jeremiah 31 verse 31. The covenant will be restored with the people designated from the very beginning as its beneficiaries. We have moved forward 4,000 years, 80 Yaubel, and have returned to where it all began. There is no accommodation here for replacement theology, for Gentiles replacing Yehudim or the disowning of Yisrael in favor of a church. God says what he means, and he means what he says. This is an intellectual kill shot for Christianity. Surprisingly, it is also devastating for Judaism because the covenant, while central and essential to Yahowah, is not among the 13 principles of Judaism. Its 5 conditions and 5 benefits receive no mention in rabbinic literature. There is no correlation in Judaism between the berith and YYV nor any acknowledgement that doubt exemplified and enabled our inclusion. And, of course, it's hard to engage in a relationship with someone whose name is never spoken. The adjective chadash renewed is defined by its actionable root, the verb chadash. It means to renew, to restore, to repair, and to reaffirm. This isn't announcing a New Testament, a Talmud, or a Quran but, instead, the reaffirmation and restoration of the one and only, unique and exclusive, berith covenant, which is a family relationship. This extraordinary opportunity will transpire within a decade from this writing in 2023, and it will be unlike anything humankind has ever experienced. The occasion of restoration and return, when the covenant is restored, will be finalized on Yom Kippurim in year 6000 Yah, sunset in Jerusalem, 6:22 p.m. local time, the first day of the week on October 2, 2033. Our decision, whether informed or tragically misinformed, will be considered final, at some point prior to this time. This is, however, a different situation than what occurred some 4,000 years ago between Yahowah and Abraham, or even 3,480 years ago on the way out of Mitzrayim. Those ancient events set these current events into motion, albeit with a sense of urgency felt not by his people, but by Yahowah. It will differ somewhat from, it won't be exactly like, the covenant, berith, the family-oriented relationship agreement, which, to reveal the way to the benefits of the relationship, asher, that provide directions showing the steps to walk in the correct and restrictive manner which give meaning to life and provide encouragement and joy to those properly led and guided, I entered into, I established by setting apart when I cut, with their fathers, of him, on the day, Yaum, during the time, I firmly took them by the hand, and with overwhelming intent, overpowered the situation, Chazak any Yad, I showed an intense resolve and was inflexible in my influence over them, even overriding them at times due to the urgent need for them to prevail, to bring them out, La Yatza, Min, to draw them out and bring them close, descending and extending myself to serve by removing them from, of the realm of the crucibles of oppression in Egypt, Eretz Mitzrayim. The place of subjugation associated with religious coercion and political tyranny, the land of military domination and economic cruelty, from a compound of to question and zar, troubling and adversarial situations. It is important to appreciate the implications of Chazak, especially as it relates to the contrast between these past and future events. There was an urgency then to liberate a reluctant audience. The enslaved Yisraelites knew little of Yahowah and nothing of his Torah or covenant. They were introduced to Pesach and Matzah but were unaware of their full implications. To get their attention and bring them home, Yahowah overpowered the situation and intervened with overwhelming conviction. Otherwise, he could not overcome their reluctance to achieve his intent to honor the promises he made to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob regarding the covenant. By contrast, on Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations, Yahowah's children are here because they sought out, examined, and came to understand the terms and conditions now readily available to all mankind regarding Yahowah's covenant agreement. Their understanding of the roles played by the father and son allowed them to come home, not by the overwhelming intent of Yah, but of their own free will. They have chosen to come home by engaging in the covenant and attending the YYV. They did not come kicking and screaming, but of their own free will. This time, rather than leaving Mitzrayim, they disassociated themselves from the modern political, religious, and geographic manifestations of Babylon. They are no longer confounded or confused. And they are not estranged. And yet by contrast, in the days which followed the first Exodus and for a long time thereafter, relationally, they broke, Asher Hem Perar Eth, they sought to nullify that relationship by thwarting its intent and by disassociating from the correct path, thereby revoking the benefits of, my covenant, berith any, my family-oriented relationship agreement, although we were married, wa anaki ba'al hem, even though we were conceived to be husband and wife, even leader and follower, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya. Existence and his role in our shalom, reconciliation, reveals through this prophet, Na'am, prophetically declares. Yirma'yah respect and revere Yah Jeremiah 31 verse 32. The covenant is reciprocal, and that's why it's called a relationship agreement. God consistently honors his commitments and will continue to do so, which is the reason for restoring his relationship with his people. However, with mankind, that has not been the case. It's been a rocky road, beginning with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob, and it went steadily downhill from there. And now in the wake of rabbinic Judaism, 4 of the 5 conditions of the covenant are routinely nullified and revoked. Christians are 0 for 5. And Muslims and progressives don't even know there is one. The problem continues to be ignorance and avoidance of the Torah. Without it, there is no access to the covenant. With it, Jews are in breach. Jeremiah's statement, however, does not apply to anyone other than Yisrael and Yehuda, because they alone, Perar, broke the berith. Christians were never part of it. For this reason, because of this, yes, indeed, truthfully, and instead, this is, Zoth, specifically, the covenant, berith, the family-oriented relationship agreement, which, to enjoy the benefits of the relationship, asher, to lead to the correct path to walk to get the most out of life, I will cut, I will create through separation, making and establishing, with, death, alongside and on behalf of, the house of Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, the home of those who engage and endure with God. After that, Char Hahem, in the latter days, prophetically declares, Na'am, announces in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, God's personal name pronounced as guided by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence for our shalom, reconciliation as our Eloah, God. I will provide, placing, Nathan, I will give and ascribe, producing, offering, and bestowing, my Torah guidance, Towrah with my teaching, instructions, and directions, within them, Karabhem, inside of them, such that it is part of their inner person, part of their thought process, affecting their conscience, and animating their lives. And integrated into their ability to make decisions, Lebhem, and upon their inclinations and disposition, their character and thinking, their hearts and minds, I will write it, Kathab Hai, I will inscribe and engrave it. I will be, Wahaya, I will exist as, their God, Lahem La Elohim, drawing near them and approaching them as a ram shepherding his sheep. And they shall be my family, Wahem Haya La Eni La Am, and they will always exist near me as my people. Yirma'yah teaches and guides Jeremiah 31 verse 33. Yehuda is not mentioned because Yisrael is now reunited and Yehuda is part of the collective whole. And while the restoration of Yisrael at the conclusion of this time of return and renewal is telling, that small manna compared to what follows. Up to this point, Yahowah's Torah was available to us but not integrated into us. We have the option to take it or leave it, to observe it and reflect upon it. And even for those of us who devote our lives to understanding it and sharing it, we barely scratch the surface of what can be known and understood. Further, there is an enormous difference between reading the Torah in Hebrew while contemplating its intent in English in a world polluted by religion, versus having it integrated into our core nature, while becoming fluent in Hebrew within Yah's perfect embrace. While you may want the Torah integrated now rather than later, it wouldn't be appropriate. Yah is not going to supplant our free will by imposing his will on us. This is our time to choose while we have the opportunity to respond to Yahowah's calling. It is also a time of discovery, where we can capitalize upon what we have been given to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. Today, we have the opportunity to work with God to do something that will endure the test of time. We can encourage others to closely examine and carefully consider Yahowah's Torah such that they receive the covenant's benefits. We can contribute to the size and quality of God's family while Yahowah enhances our lives. And that is what this is all about. For us to be Yahowah's children, for us to function as a family, we need to be more like our Father. The integration of the Torah will go a long way toward accomplishing this. On this day in 2023, and every day for 22 years, we have done our utmost to encourage all who are interested, especially Yisrael and Yehuda, to Yada Yahowah to choose of their own accord to become familiar with, come to know and understand Yahowah. It continues to be a labor of love, and the most rewarding opportunity of our lives. We do so by translating Yahowah's Torah instructions while contemplating the implications of his guidance. Our mission will soon be obsolete, and we will be retired. Once Yahowah's family returns to the fold, and Yahowah writes a copy of his Torah within our consciousness, integrating his teaching into our lives, the entire family will come to realize what we discovered, and more, far more than we could possibly understand at this moment. For us, a time of celebration awaits, not only because Yahowah will honor our devotion to Yada, knowing to call Yisrael and Yehuda home, but also because our lives will be similarly enriched and enlightened on this day. No longer shall anyone impart information or teach, while Lamet out, no one will continue to instruct or encourage, Peel imperfect. The recipients of this instruction will be influenced by the continuous teaching with ongoing consequences, individuals in association with an outspoken world, YSHFREA, who, their companions, friends, and errant countrymen among humankind, each of his troublesome neighbors or his loudmouthed associates in an attempt to reason with them, or, other. Individuals according to brotherly kinship, YSHFACH who, with regard to blood relatives and closely associated individuals such as family members, and in this context, Yisrael and Yehuda, so as to say, Amar, approaching to declare. Choose of your own accord to know Yahowah, Yada Yahowah, decide to recognize and acknowledge Yah, and show some desire to become familiar with and understand Yahowah, Kal imperative, because, truthfully and by contrast, at this time, everyone will know me, Kol Hem Yada, Any, all of them, without exception, will actually be aware of and genuinely acknowledge me, and they will continually recognize and literally understand me, Kal imperfect, from the youngest, Lamin Katan Hem. Regarding the approach of the most recent arrival among them, and up to the enduring witness of most important and oldest, Ad Gadalhem, including those of the longest duration, the earliest arrivals whose eternal testimony remains the most significant, those who arrived a long time ago, prophetically reveals, announces in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, God's personal name pronounced as guided by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence for our Shalom. Reconciliation as our Eloah, God. Yirma'yah Yah lifts me up and raises me Jeremiah 31 verse 34. Many of the fortunate souls experiencing this marvelous moment in time will be spiritual infants, those recent respondents to Yahowah's call to restoration and return, arriving toward the conclusion of the time of Yaakov's troubles. And yet, with Yahowah's Torah guidance scribed within them, they will recognize and acknowledge their Father. They will be welcomed by Yahowah's prophets, those whose eternal testimony made this day possible. If I am wrong, I'll gladly admit it during this celebration, but I think that this Torah teaching and guidance would have been written in lowercase if such a concept existed in Hebrew. This is because the existing Torah, from Beres Yth through Dabrim, contains painful remembrances of disappointing choices which will no longer be germane. Moreover, just as there will be no reason at this point to tell those who already know Yahowah to Yada Yah, there will be no reason to explain the conditions of the covenant to those already experiencing the joy of participating in it. As spiritual beings in heaven, we will no longer need to know how to get there but instead how to act once there. We will require guidance on how to explore the universe without doing damage to it or ourselves. And for that, we will need a far more advanced edition of Yahowah's Torah, instructions and guidance. Yod Hey Wahey. I can't help but revel in how the juxtaposition of the prophets with the Psalms has become so insightful and revealing, indeed, so reassuring and reaffirming. It is as if Dowd and Yirma'yah were meant to be together. They are like lamb and wine. As it should be, Yahowah's return with Dowd will be the single most important day in human history, since creation, really. This pronouncement begins as have the others, with Yahowah drawing our attention to what will occur. Behold, Hina, pay attention and look up, days are coming, Yamim Bao, a time is approaching, prophetically reveals, Naam, announces in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, Yahowah, God's one and only name pronounced as guided by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence for our Shalom, reconciliation as our, Eloah, God, when, I will take a stand to establish, thereby fulfilling, Kyum. I will come onto the scene to accomplish and confirm, validating by bringing to a successful conclusion, the beneficial account, Eth ha-daber ha-taub, the good word, desirable matter, and generous promise, which, to show the way to the relationship, Asher, which, to reveal the proper path to get the most out of life, I spoke to, Daber El, I communicated as Almighty God on behalf of, the house of Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, the home of those who engage and endure with God, and with, YYV, the family of Yehuda, Beit Yehuda, the household of those beloved by Yah. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up and raises me /Jeremiah 33 verse 14. Based upon this announcement, as these days approach, we should be looking forward to Yahowah fulfilling his promises. These will include, restoring his relationship with Yisrael and Yehuda, bringing these very same people home to their land, returning to greet them, bringing Dowd with him to guide and protect them, restoring what was taken away from them, transforming the earth into the conditions enjoyed in the garden, enriching and extending his people's lives, and at the same time, ridding the world of their enemies. He will do all of these things and more, including integrating his Torah guidance into our very nature. This speaks of honoring several promises. In those days, Ba ha-yamim ha-hem, and during that time, Wah-ha-eth ha-hai, for Dowd, Dowd, on behalf of the approach of the beloved and for David, as the rightful branch, Semak Tzadik, as the correct means to live and grow, the valid means to become upright, prosperous, innocent, and vindicated, I will support abundant growth, Samak, I will cause profuse and plentiful fruit from the source, increasing the capacity in the ability to support life, bringing this to fruition and to a successful completion. He will act upon and engage in, Asa, he will profit from, expending considerable energy to bring about and promote, Perfect, the means to make sound decisions and justly resolve disputes, Mishpat, judgment, being judgmental while making informed and reasoned decisions, while also providing sentencing, to ponder and Shapat, to decide, in addition to, being right, Tzedakah, being correct, upright, and vindicated, in the land, Ba ha-eretz, Yirma'yah/respect and revere Yah/Jeremiah 33 verse 15. That Semak Tzadik rightful branch is Dowd. He is connected and correct when it comes to God, and as such, if we want to be right, even grafted onto that same branch, we ought to consider what he said and did on our behalf. God chose Dowd David to be his son, king and Messiah, the branch and shepherd, and is returning with him for a reason, one the world has either ignored, rejected, or misplaced. In this statement, we are reminded that Dowd, having engaged in the Mishpat, means to make sound decisions and justly resolve disputes, gained a complete understanding to be validated as totally correct. Moreover, Yahowah is going to deploy Dowd as judge and jury. While there are some variances, much of what comes before and follows echoes what we read earlier in Yirma'yah 23. The embellishments include supporting abundant growth due to the favorable conditions experienced in Jerusalem. In those days, Ba ha-yam ha-hem, at that time, Yehuda, Yahowah's beloved and those who are related to Yah, will be liberated and saved, Yasha, will become victorious and free, delivered from harm's way and rescued, experiencing salvation. And, Yerushalayim, the source from which teaching and guidance regarding reconciliation flow, will dwell, Shakan, will abide and remain, living, confidently and securely, Labatach, safely as a result of their trust. And, this is the designation, Zeh Shem, this can be regarded as his name and reputation, by which to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, to lead along the proper path to get the most out of life, he will be called, Kara Lahu, he will be invited and summoned, designated and welcomed, his name read and recited, and by which he will be met, Kalim perfect, Yahowah makes us right. Yahowah Tzedek Anaknu, Yahowah was honest with us because Yahowah vindicates those of us who are correct. Yirma'yah/Yah teaches and guides/Jeremiah 33 verse 16. While there is no mistaking the fact that Dowd took the initiative to know God, the understanding he gained along the way was provided by Yahowah, either through his word or spirit. It was Yahowah who made it possible for Dowd to be vindicated and correct, so that through him we could enjoy the same result. For this reason. For thus says, Kyko Amar, indeed, this is what is affirmed by Yahowah, God's one and only name pronounced as guided by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence for our Shalom, reconciliation as our Eloah, God, Dowd, the beloved, commonly called, David, shall never be cut off, cease to exist, or fail, will never be cast down or diminished, banished or eliminated, as the person, as the individual and man, to inhabit, Yashab, to sit. And dwell upon, established on, the most honorable seat, Kais, the throne, the place of leadership and authority, of the house of Yisrael, Beit Yisrael, the home of those who engage and endure with God. Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up and raises me /Jeremiah 33 verse 17. From Yahowah's perspective, Dowd is the best of us. And since Dowd was not the best behaved individual who ever lived, we do well to consider the criteria Yahowah uses to evaluate people. That said, this revelation obliterates the tenets of the religion best known for its dead God on a stick. It proves that Shaul Paul lied when claiming the Torah cannot save anyone, opining that violating a single edict was tantamount to breaking them all. Clearly, Daud was Torah observant, engaged in and fulfilled the YYV, participated in and enabled the berith, and was tzaddik with Yah, prompting God to say these things about him. We can also confidently conclude that the promises Yahowah made expressly to Daud belong to no other, because their actual fulfillment occurred on this day. Yahowah's unequivocal and irrefutable proclamation affirms that Daud will return as our eternal king to sit on his eternal throne next to his father. Moreover, the seat of honor is in Yisrael, not in Rome, nor is it the seat of St. Peter. There is no mention of Gentiles, Christians, Christ, or a church for a reason, and that is because they are not part of Yahowah's plan and are not included among his people. Not long ago we also learned that these Gentile institutions will be annihilated. While this is what we came to affirm, what follows is too intriguing to forego. God's next statement is a crushing blow to the aspirations and claims of rabbinic Judaism. Long ago, power-hungry men pushed the thresholds of free will to the point of democratic control over God's intent. Led by Rabbi Akiba, they claimed that because there were many of them and only one God they could outvote Hashem, even on matters prescribed in the Torah. So, they conjured up some replacement theology of their own. These self-serving and egotistical clerics claimed that all of the instructions, rights, privileges, benefits, and promises afforded the Loi in their exclusive role as priests on behalf of God and his people now belonged to them but, of course, without any of the Torah's restrictions or requirements. After outvoting Yahowah, they discredited the Loi Levitical priesthood and severed their established connection to the Torah. They usurped the role of the priesthood, exalting themselves to satiate their avarice at the expense of the people. It is one of many aspects of rabbinic Judaism, which is the only surviving sect of the religion, that makes a mockery of Jewish claims to be Torah observant. As we have noted to the detriment of Christians, and now to discredit religious Jews, Yahowah means what he says. The Torah will be eternally integrated into the lives of his people, they will live eternally as part of the covenant family, Daud will always lead Yah's sheep, and the Loi will continually serve God as originally intended, and for our benefit. And also, the Loi, Wala ha-Loi, then, accordingly, those who attend to and join together, commonly called Levite, priests, ha-Kohen, ministers and advisors, shall not be diminished or eliminated, and never be without, will not be cut off or cease to exist, they will not be banished or fail by lacking, an individual, a person, to approach my presence, min lapana any, for reason of drawing near my appearance, by offering that which uplifts, ala ola, by lifting up that which ascends, transforming a physical entity into light, qatar, morphing matter into energy through combustion to join together and enclose, thereby engaging in an offering to approach, converting and adapting by burning something savory, with the roasting producing a smoky aroma in the form of incense, even to fumigate to eliminate pests, as a present bestowed and offered without compensation, mincha. As a gift which is allocated and allotted freely, from a root meaning to bestow and apportion. While also, engaging in and acting upon, asa, performing and carrying out, the sacrificial offerings, zibak, communion and harmonious relations through feasts by preparing meat for consumption, all days and, thus, continually throughout time, kol hayamim, every day, Yirma'yah/Yah lifts me up and raises me Jeremiah 33 verse 18. The purpose of the YYV invitations to be called out and meet with God was always meant to prepare the children of the covenant to enter their heavenly Father's presence. The Loi carried out their prescribed responsibility of assuring that each step along the way to approach God was accomplished and understood within the context of the Torah's guidance. As a result, when presented and observed correctly, the beneficiaries of the YYV are transformed and liberated from material beings stuck in 3 dimensions to 7-dimensional energy-based individuals akin to light. This empowers us such that we can appear before and properly relate to Yahowah. Admittedly, however, you will not find qatar rendered as transforming a physical entity into light or morphing matter into energy through combustion in any lexicon, even though every definition includes burning, whereby wood is converted into radiant energy and light. They acknowledge combustion and the aroma of smoke, as well as the word's association with achieving a favorable result, which several lexicons define as approaching and engaging by joining together. I simply extrapolated from these connotations based on what we learned. And it seemed reasonable to do so in recognition that this is about entering Yahowah's presence through Allah and Ola, by being raised and lifted up. Progressing through the words, we find that mincha is also a bit of an enigma since as a noun, no one seems to know what it represents, leaving us to consider its verbal root. From there a picture emerges of Yah providing to his children, a present bestowed and offered without compensation, a gift which is allocated and allotted freely. This, too, is a slap in the face of rabbis who conjured up all manner of absurd ploys to charge exorbitant fees for services they mandated in their Talmud. Most everything required to be kosher, the central plank of the religion, is a money-making scheme. While the meaning of zabak is undisputed, which is to prepare an animal for consumption, which necessitates butchering and cooking it, the purpose is often misappropriated. The participants offer nothing to God but are instead nourished by the result. Said another way, every day will be a feast. There is an apparent conflict, however, one which I suspect is resolved through Albert Einstein's formula, E=mc². To celebrate the YYV, but also to enjoy one of the delights of camping out with our Heavenly Father, we will leave the 7th dimension as energy and explore the 6th-dimensional universe below as material beings. Additionally, the reason, kol hayamim, every day, may have been used instead of the more common, la aulam, forever, is that time is actually a function of matter because it only flows in a material realm. Therefore, the zabak could be limited to the years between 6000 and 7000 Yah, which are celebrated in Eretz the material realm, or they are addressing the days we choose to manifest physical features and enjoy the opportunities they alone provide. In the ultimate treasure trove of mind-expanding revelations, this next one shines brightly. If you are a Christian, be prepared to swallow your tongue and eat your words. So much for the notion of a New Testament based upon a New Covenant. As with all myths, it never had any validity. Then, the word, wadaber, the statement, message, and account, the matters worth communicating, of Yahowah, Yahowah, God's proper name transliterated as directed by his Torah, instructions on his Haya, existence for our Shalom, reconciliation as our Eloah, God, was directed to, El, concerning God for, Yirma'yah, Yahweh lifts me up and raises me, Yah teaches and guides me. And I respect and revere Yahowah, in order to say, La, Amar, so as to announce, 33:19, this is what Yahowah declares, Ko, Amar Yahowah. If you can break, revoke, nullify, or split into two parts, I'm Perar. If you can violate, thwart, or foil, frustrating the intent of, or in any way disassociate from, by creating a second variation of, from 4qjair, hyphal imperfect, denotes cause and effect with the subject, those nullifying the covenant by separating it into two parts, influencing the object, which is Yahowah's covenant at this time, in this manner such that it now reflects their intent, making the object a secondary subject in this regard, with ongoing implications, my covenant, eth beareth any, that which is according to and associated with my family-oriented relationship agreement, of this time, ha-yam, of this day, or my family-oriented relationship agreement, wa, eth beareth any, or that which pertains to my covenant, during a time of darkness, ha-layla, of the night deprived of light, then, wa. A means to approach does not and will not exist, la bil thy haya. Accordingly, its existence is negated through disassociation. Based upon what was done, Yomam, at that time pertaining to the actions which interrupted it, when darkness prevailed, wa layla, during the absence of light, in their time, ba, ethem, dot. Yirma'yah / respect and revere Yah / Jeremiah 33 verse 20. Sometimes a single word can speak volumes. Such is the case with Perar. It served to condemn Christianity 800 years before the religion was created. During a time of darkness, away from the light, with the invention of a New Testament predicated upon transferring God's promises from Daud and Yisrael to themselves as a result of Shaul's Paul's irrational diatribe, they nullified the covenant of this day by creating a second one. In so doing, they disassociated themselves, Daud, and Yisrael from Yahowah's one and only covenant, frustrating its intent. In this case, para conveys the hyphal stem, meaning those who would seek to nullify Yahowah's covenant would frustrate the intent of the original covenant by separating it into two parts, and they would also suffer the effect of the verb, which is to be thwarted and foiled, and in the imperfect conjugation, the implications are ongoing. Admittedly, this passage is a challenging translation with the interjection of ha-yam and ha-layla without a preposition. As such, they can be simplistically rendered as, of the day, and, of the night. Superficially then, translators commonly infer that, the Lord had a covenant, with the day, and, with the night. However, ba, with, was not written in the text. Therefore, since there is no corresponding mention of a covenant, with the day, or one, with the night, and recognizing that such a concept is ludicrous, the most responsible approach is to acknowledge that Yahowah's covenant, of this day and time, was nullified by splitting it into two parts during a time of darkness. Earlier in Yirma'yah we read that Yahowah would re-establish his covenant with Yisrael and Yehudah by placing his Torah, guidance, inside of his people. This made the notion of a New Testament predicated on annulling the Torah, and of replacing an Old Testament with a New Testament predicated on entirely different criteria, teaching versus faith, absurd to the point of scandalous. It should have been instantly and summarily rebuked. But, alas, there simply weren't enough rational and responsible people on earth to point out Christianity's faulty assumption. So perhaps now, this will help clear it up, and we can move on and past the religion of Shaul Paul and his plague of death. If you advocate a second, newer, and thus replacement covenant, there is no chance that your soul will survive Yahowah's return. If you remain intent on frustrating the promises God has made to his people, claiming them for your church, you are nearing the termination of your existence. In this follow-on statement, Perar reappears but is now modified by the hopeful stem, which is quite rare since its implications are so extreme. As we know, stems create a relationship between the subject and object of the sentence with regard to the action of the verb. Perar to violate, break, and nullify is already harsh, but when these concepts which are so caustic to a relationship are taken to the extreme of the hopeful stem, it would be unwise for us to gloss over it. Also interesting, since the hopeful stem is the passive counterpart to the hyphal stem, the subject of the verb causes the object to participate in the action as an under or secondary subject. Therefore, in this case, Christians directly caused the covenant to be nullified by breaking it into two parts and, in the process, made the resulting covenant a source of frustration, like themselves. When we consider Yahowah's reasoning in what follows, we should be aware that the ploy used to garner credibility for religion was based upon nullifying everything Yahowah actually said and promised. The religious either nullify what Daud achieved, or they rob him of all of his accolades and accomplishments. Moreover, if that is so, besides and by comparison and contrast, then again by concession, my covenant, beareth any, my family-oriented relationship agreement, would be broken and revoked through compulsion by creating a second variation outside the auspices of free will, Perar, can be forcefully divided into two separate parts without my consent, and thereby thwarted and frustrated, even disassociated and violated against my will, hopeful imperfect, the forced imposition by those. Breaking the covenant agreement without consideration for its intent with unfolding consequences over time, with Daud, with my beloved, my co-worker, Ebed any, the one I work and associate with. He would, thereby, be prevented from being, min hayalahu, as a result, he could not approach, and from such means of being separated from that which he originally belonged he would not exist as, a son, ben, reigning as king, melech, coronated and considered as advisor and leader, on his throne, al-Kais, who, upon his seat of honor, and such would be the case with, the loi, ha-loi, those who attend to and join together, commonly called Levite, priests, ha-Kohen, ministers. And advisors, serving as my ministers, shareth any, attending to my ceremonies by rendering assistance, Yirma'yah teaches and guides Jeremiah 33 verse 21. God just said, if I were forced against my will to break my covenant, frustrating its intent by separating it into two parts, then my promises to Dowd and my instructions regarding the Lowy would be nullified. And without doubt, Yahowah does not have a Ben son to place on the throne, which speaks volumes about the importance of his service as the Passover lamb. It also means that rabbis are illegitimate usurpers who have no place or purpose in Yahowah's plans. This is breathtaking in its implications. While among the most challenging translations we have endeavored to accurately render, we have been handsomely rewarded for our efforts. Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism crumble in the wake of these words. Since Yahowah's promises are true, these religions are false. Likewise, they remain false because God's promises are reliable and fulfilled. There is no rational way for either to be inspired or valid. For those not similarly deluded, Yahowah has some very good news. To show the correct way to the relationship, Asher, to benefit and get the most joy out of life, the vast array of heaven's spiritual messengers, Tzaba HaShemaim, the ranks of the command and control regime of spiritual implements out of the heavens, cannot be counted, lo, Saphar, are innumerable, without a census, and beyond relating a number. Also, just as the sands of the sea, Wahal-Yam, the loose and coarse granular material that is worn down as tiny rocks of the ocean, are beyond measure, lo, Madad, cannot be accurately assessed relative to the quantity, in this manner and in this sequence of events, it is likewise valid, therefore, that in time, I will multiply, increasing in number, dimensions, and power, Rabbah, I will increase, making numerous and great, hyphal and perfect, that which is associated with the seeds, which were sown by the descendants of Zerah, the resulting seed, the offspring and family, in addition to that which takes root and bears fruit based upon what was planted by Dowd, the beloved, my associate, Ebed Eni, the one I have worked with and will serve with, in addition to, also, the Lowy, Ha-Lowy, those who attend to and join together, commonly called Levite, who serve with me, Shareth Eni, who attend to my ceremonies by rendering assistance in conjunction to me. Yirma'yah lifts me up and raises me Jeremiah 33 verse 22. It is music to my ears, and I trust to yours as well. Dowd is the centerpiece of God's plan, the cornerstone of his home, and the exemplar of his family. To ignore him, deny him, or rob and replace him is spiritual suicide. Yada Yahowah.